Hey everybody. Thanks for everybody that tuned in last night to the live stream. We had fun cruising around Santan and Queen Creek. But I wanted to go over this before we send it off. This one is actually shifted and it needs to be reset, which is a bit of a process. I'd actually also recommend, since while we would have it apart, you use some steel wool and some elbow grease and maybe a polisher and polish up. You got to polish up this steel, and then you can. The original coating was a clear zinc. That's what TC Sounds used, but you can at that point you can even get it powder coated if you wanted, and you can do other e coatings like a black zinc or something like that, or even polish it and then do a chrome if that's what you wanted. You just got to get in touch with a metal finisher that can do that. But I wanted to go over some of the specs and the history of this. So this is the 3HP Neo. The original design used a very large, relatively N52 slug. I'm having trouble finding any of the archives on the Lightning Audio brand. I think that's because Rockford kind of made it disappear. They kind of scrubbed the internet a little bit of any. I my okay. So I worked for Lightning Audio in the summer of '99, and that's right when Rockford bought them, and they wanted to buy them because they didn't want to put their own brand into Walmart. And so, as you can see, if you do a little bit of research, you can see where Universal teamed up with Rockford Corporation to come out with something called the Fast and the Furious series. And Rockford kind of waffled. They did some subs as Fast and Furious, but mostly what they did was they used Lightning Audio as sort of their bitch brand to put those amplifiers in Walmart. They didn't want to put Rockford in because at the time they felt like Walmart was kind of a degrade, that it would diminish their brand. And so that was one of the reasons why they bought Lightning. Another reason was because they were all, Rockford and Lightning were both buying their accessories from the same factory over in China. And so it made sense to buy the brand. It was also because it was local. It was just a couple of blocks over from Rockford. And so, and Lightning was very, very small, even though they had taken over, like, I think 3 or 4 suites when I worked there. But again, they were after the IP, and also there was the fact that Lightning was able to make a success based on just accessories. And prior to that, Rockford had already failed twice at accessories and doing the accessory business. Again, I think a lot of it is just Rockford. Just it's their corporate mentality about ROI, and that they kind of don't. And when I say ROI, that means return on investment. That they're more focused on the money rather than the fun that you guys enjoy in the seeing new stuff and collecting this stuff and things like that. But so, anyways, let me go over some of the specs. This one has the 5.8 bolt hole circle. It's got 4 positions, so it ends up being in 90 degrees from one another. And those are threaded for quarter 20, which is quarter inch, and then it's 20 threads per inch. So that's known as quarter 20. The pole, somebody's calling me. The pole is even, which there was back in January. Let me pull it up real quick. Back in January of what was it, 2024? I can't remember now. This is a version I was working on for Josh. His head shifted, and I was like, let me clean this up later. And so what I ended up doing was just using a little steel wool, and then we used some clear paint to just kind of protect it a little bit. So, and we ended up adding the 127 bolt hole circle as well as the 135. And then also there was another Lightning Audio 4-hole pattern that was, I think, slightly, I want to say bigger, but I can't remember now. I'll have to look back at the old video, but one of the reasons why I'm doing this video again is because you guys don't go back and look at my old videos. You're like, I want new stuff. So I'm like, okay, I'll do a new video. Here is the group that I started in honor of TC Sounds and Audio Pulse and all the OEM that Tilo and company did. It's TC Sounds, Audio Pulse, Storm Archive, OEM subwoofer support and sales. Let's see, we got 1,000 members, which is great. And there's some interesting stuff on there. It's very, you know, early to mid 2000s, kind of cool stuff. Tilo and company ended up filing for bankruptcy in 2007. And I had no idea he was filing for bankruptcy. And then that's when things changed hands. I'm going to put all these links in the description just so you guys can see them. Some of them, this is all from the, oh, I can look this up in the archive. There's pricing here for the Neo. So this is a Neo, removable Neo top assembly or removable motor. They were only charging $256 for it, which is crazy. And I think I told you guys last night in the live stream, I ended up getting about 50 of these motors for right around $10 each. From the, I didn't know it was a bankruptcy sale. I just knew that Tilo was giving me some good deals, and that I was in, I don't think I spent a lot of time in the TC Sounds forums. Because again, this is all before Facebook. And they also had another one called SPL Junkyard. Let me go to the archive real quick. Because I looked on some of the links, and the links were dead. And you know, for a website that is still alive and posting that stuff, it's going to be dead. So, but let's see what they. Back in 2008. So they were probably doing clearance after Rockford basically threw away the brand. Here's that page again. And we'll see if it comes up. So the nomenclature that Lightning used was a little different. And again, Rockford was in charge of that. And so the original subs that came out, which was the V1s, those did not have the removable top assembly. I think that one's dead. They did not have the removable top assembly. So they came out with that at the during the X2 thing. And then they also had the option for a Neo upgrade. So the original one would come with the ceramic motor, which is the 3 HP. Let me see if I can pull that up. I pulled it up, which is the same as the TC3000. So, and this I'll put this link in there. And so the TC3000, the ceramic version, had 160 Newton meters of motor force, which is pretty good, pretty darn good. And this used a what Tilo named as non-linear coil, which is just a regular coil, and had 30 millimeter of X-Max. It used a 60 millimeter wind height. And this came in a bunch of different flavors. So he did a quad 2, he did a quad 1, and then he did an 8-layer 2, and then an 8-layer 4. And then they also came in 4 layers as well. Well, and that's what we ended up buying from Precision Econowind. Because I think Tilo, he made a couple of mistakes when he sent me a bunch of parts. I ended up buying a bunch of the hexacone, honeycomb cones that he had used on, I think it was called the TC OEM. If you look on the website, again, you know, kind of poke around through the archive and look at different captures that the, what are they called, spiders? It's the little robots that go around basically poking every link that's possible on a website so that you can, so that it sort of it copies all the information. So, but let's go back to this one. So I don't remember where I read it, but so 100, was it 100? I remember it being 140, but maybe there was, maybe I think Tilo used a better series of ferrite when he reintroduced this. So because this is basically the Storm, Lightning Audio Storm subwoofer with the same frame. And it's got a 10-inch spider. This one had a aluminum or a titanium cone. Single dish titanium cone, high excursion, tall NBR rubber surround. He says this one has a shorting ring in it, which again, it doesn't need that. But it was 215 ounces, and I believe this one was triple 3/4 inch slugs. With a motor that has 20% relative more BL product than the already impressive TC2000, which is the TC9 motor. So again, I don't know how much of that is real. Tilo started getting a little bit into the marketing part to sort of, make more money. But it was 160 Newton meters of force at 1 watt. And then, let's go look down the BL numbers. Yeah, see, the BL numbers in the nonlinear coil are like 27 Tesla meters. So, and that's normal stuff that you see like from Phi or from DC or somebody like that. Somebody that's making a really badass subwoofer. And then I pulled up the LMS 400 or 4000. This was a 3-inch platform LMS driver, and Tilo came out with this before he came out with the LMS R that you saw from Parts Express, which is the TC9 motor. And then I think it's a shorter version of the coil. This version of the coil I think is a 70 millimeter, and it's got a variable wind. Let's see if the picture's still in here. I don't know if the picture's going to be in here. Let's see if it'll come up. No, it's still small. And this is a quad stack. And one of the things that he said, that Tilo said, was that LMS likes a thin top plate. So, and for forever, Tilo was always about underhung motors, or at least just a thick top plate. And so the 3HP has a 36 millimeter top plate, and which is the same as where is it at? Did I go away? There it is. Which is the uncut version. So there was another version of this that he had introduced to Eclipse as I don't want to say it was the 9000 series, but it might have been. It was the TI series, titanium series. And then the Titanium Pro was the larger motors, the 4-inch standard. So there's also what's called a Volcano version where he basically turned this part down, the upper part down, and then was left with this thin part showing, and then the rest of this was like on the inside. I think I've showed them to you before of what the 3HP Volcano version is, and that one is made more for the TI frame, which you see here on the LMS 4000, which is that series of frame. So I wish there was better pictures. But let's get to the specs. Top plate ID is 87.2 millimeter. And then, of course, it's 36 millimeter thick. The pole OD, right here, this part, is 74 millimeter. And then this lip here is 12.5 millimeter. But you can see it curves down like that. And then this bottom part is the second piece, and then the Neo here is on the outside of the coil. There are other designs that were similar that were done by Drew. I don't remember Drew's last name. Drew did some design work for Diamond Audio on their D9 series, and what they did was they used a smaller slug of Neo and put it in the pole. So the top plate was only like probably about 3/4 inch thick. It was just like a puck. And then there was the Neo slug, and then the rest of it was all steel that looped up to the lip. And then they would bolt the frame to the lip. And then what they did was they did something called TDX, which was that they used the frame as the heatsink, because that's not nearly enough neo, and so that motor is gonna be really heat sensitive. So because when you use in 52, it's heat sensitive, especially heat sensitive. Now a lot of things have changed, because this is now I think 20, it's over 20 years old, and so was Drew's design. Drew invented the TDX. Let me finish that thought on the TDX. The patent for the TDX, and I don't think it was a patent. I think it was just a trademark. But what they did was they put a bunch of heatsink grease like you would in an amplifier, and then they would put the whole motor, into the chassis, which is the speaker frame, and then the speaker frame had a whole bunch of fins on it, like the JBL GTI, I think it's called. It looked a lot like that, so I don't want to pull it up right now. But Drew then took that design with him when Diamond kind of fell off the map a little bit, and he went over to Rockford Fosgate, and then that's when he created the T2 for them, the updated version of the T2, and then the T3. And the T3 is a very, very large version of that with a big Neo slug in it. And I think they spent $100,000 on tooling for that thing. But it was a promo item. It wasn't really a production item. And so it wasn't, what I mean by that, it wasn't meant to sell. It wasn't meant to make a real profit. You're better off spending $100,000 on an item that people can touch and see in person than you are spending it on ads. See how that works? And so what they do is they spend $100,000 on tooling, and then whatever production cost is probably on that one. It was probably a little higher. It's probably about $200 a unit, and and then they put them out there, and people go, wow, oh, this is really cool, and that creates more buzz than what the advertising would create. Does that make sense to you? And so, but anyways, that's another way to do the Neo motor. I want to do a version that comes down and puts the Neo far away from the gap where the coil is centered vertically, from the Neo. So because when this thing gets hot, and again, if you're getting this hot, you're using it wrong. So, and I had texted Josh Pastrana, Big Perm from AK. He likes to use them for 18s, and I was like, the 18's kind of big to use it, but he said he really liked it, and so, and it's not a horrible thing. I just don't like the high VAS that you get when using that motor, because again, this motor, what did we say, 160 newton meters of force at 1 watt? Yeah, 160 newton meters. So, newtons squared per watt of motor force. Again, I'm having trouble finding the information, but I remember seeing that the Neo version had a little bit more BL at 210 newton meters squared. So it was a little bit of an upgrade, and then it was also slightly lighter. This one is pretty heavy, just because there's a lot of steel on it, and so there's no real getting away from the weight. Even though this was marketed as like if you had a tuner, Honda or something like that, and you wanted to be like the guys in Fast and the Furious, and you wanted to have a system in your riced out car, but you didn't want all the weight, because you don't need a woman in the car when you're doing racing with other men and making out with them. So you don't need all that weight. And so that's what this was the solution for, was the 3 HP Neo for Lightning Audio. I do not believe, I think it might have been part of the agreement. It might have been that Tilo gave all the Neos away to Rockford. There were several things that happened in the Rockford deal that went to shit, and I think that's when I bought the remaining Neos that Tilo had back in 07. And this Neo slug right here, you can see a little bit of it right there left. The chrome plating on it, they didn't prep properly. I think you're supposed to do an acid wash first on the metal so that it becomes porous, and then you're supposed to, I think, plate it with copper, and then nickel, and then chrome. And if I remember reading about that, and for some reason it didn't set well, and then of course China was like good enough, and then it's not good enough. And so what happened was they it started. Some of them they noticed a lot of flaking. When I visited RE Audio in '06, that's when a whole shipment of the MT motors had come in, and they were flaking, and they ended up having to send them all back to China to get fixed. And it's such a pain in the butt, and you're so disappointed. And then of course everybody's like the same way that everybody talks about the Jews, that's how they talk about the Chinese. And it's like, could you guys not be so racist for a second? It's just about, it's about dumb people. It's not about an ethnic reason. But anyways, dumb, lazy, impatient people. That's those people come in all colors. It's one of the first things I learned when I got in the military. So, but anyways, I contacted the owner of this. Yeah, there's a little piece right there still flaking on there. And then there's, yeah, right there. You can see that. So this really needs to be separated. And then I think the one that I did for Josh, this one, I used a wire brush and did everything. And then it doesn't hurt it. You can actually powder coat these. And then if you want to take off some of the finish, you can. You don't need bare metal contact with the Neo, but as Dan Wiggins described it, you just want it to be in close proximity. And it's really good enough. Again, these machines are not, it's not like it's not like an engine going into a Corvette. They're not as precise as you would imagine. So there's a lot you can get away with, but I think what I did was I just sprayed clear. I think we used satin because the gloss was going to look weird. I think I just did a semi-gloss, and I think they turned out fine. And so I think the only other thing I did was I spray painted the outside of the Neo Magnet black, if I remember right. Maybe Joshy will send me a picture of what it looks like. Joshy likes it just because it's got all the bolt hole patterns that he needs for the 10-inch Spider frames, which is the Storm frame, also known as the LA frame. And then we can go look at that real quick at Lord Base. And then, of course, the TI frame. So, come on, TI frame. Come up. So this computer's only got like 8 gig of RAM, so it's kind of slow. So there's that one. And then we can go back to basket frame 12. And then there is the Storm frame. So he's calling it the TC Sounds frame, which is fine. This was used it was used also for Audio Pulse. So, and then I think there's a couple of other companies that are using it now, and it's open tool now, just because, TC Sounds filed for bankruptcy in '07. And what happens is the tooling, which is in China, at XY, I believe, or one of the subsidiaries of XY, and the tooling reverts back to the ownership of the tool reverts back to the factory, and so now they can give it to anybody. So some of them are open tool, like this one. This one was used for years by, I think, American Base and stuff like that. This one was used a lot by, I think, CT Sounds and Resilient, maybe. Of course, the four spoke has been used for years. This one I saw originally from PAP, Pierce Audio Products. There's a couple other companies that use it. I used it as the Gonzo Grinch because we got them in like a neon green, monster green, something like that. And then here's the old 4-spoke version, and then here's the new 6-spoke version of the TI frame. They only do this in the 12, 15, and 18. So because Scott Atwell at Phi bought the patent, we'll look that up real quick. He bought the ornamental patent for, there we go, there's the patents. At the auction. And so technically not him, but like Phi or whoever his holding company was or is, owned the exclusive rights to the patent here in America, but the patent was already running on 20 years anyway. And so I remember getting a couple of threatening emails on eBay from some guy named Marshall that worked at I think he was for Ascendant Audio, which was like a short time partner with Phi, but the guy had a real bad attitude, and he was like, "That's it's like, shut up. These are open tool now." And then, if you want to know, I actually have the drawings. I think they're on one of my Google Drives. I'll see if I can put links to them in this video as well. I want them to be open. So the part number is 699. So this frame is 699, and then what you do is you use the part number first, 699, and then you put a little dash, and then the size is the diameter of the driver. So the 10-inch is 699-250, which is 250 millimeter. And then the 12 is -300, and then the 15 is -385, and then the 18 is -460. So if you ever want to, if you're ever fishing over in China, and again, these are the part numbers that XY assigned to them. It's the 699 is the tool number. And so just so you know, the 12-inch version that I showed you that Scott had tooled up, which again, Scott smartly went with the market. He went with the flow instead of fighting it, and instead of creating scarcity, he makes this available, and then he probably collects a royalty from the factory, because that's what you can do when you have a good relationship with the factory over in China. And then, let's say he gets probably like $1 per frame. And then what happens is, instead of collecting that and actually in actual real money, it uses to pay for the parts. And so then he gets a discounted on top of the other thing. So it's kind of a good deal. But what it does is it puts the frame out in the market for the rest of us to use. The only downside with this X2, the V2 frame is what Lord of Bass is calling it, is that it only has the 135 and 155 millimeter bolt hole circles. So that's why when I was going to do the reboot on this motor, was we didn't want to change anything, even though I think there should be some changes in, because again, this is a shifting problem. There should be bolts, 1, 2, 3 bolts that go from here into the T-yoke. There should be some improvements on it, but I ran out of money, and then they put me in prison. But we wanted to add the second 4-hole pattern. So because some of the storm frames had the other pattern, and I want to try to avoid you guys having to add the pattern to the frame. So what's cool about this one is they just put the 127 millimeter pattern already in it, which, because of these big windows, you can access it with a little side ratchet wrench. Let me see if I have one. I think it's actually this one too. So because on the quarter 20 it should be, this is the metric one. The quarter 20 it uses a 9/16 head, and so this one is perfect because it's angled. You can get in there real easy and just unratchet it. And so for the storm ones, I used the regular hex head, and then for the TI frames, I use these. I use stainless. These are M6 by 12 millimeter. And then they use a 4 millimeter hex interface so they don't strip out. The typical one is the Phillips number 3. But again, for this kind of work and using a little tool, I don't want you to strip it out. And so I try to use that instead. So I won't really get into any of the, well, I guess I could. The total height of the motor is 118 millimeter. And then the pole height from, let me pull it up real quick, from the inside of there to the floor all the way up to the top, which again, like I said, the pole is actually even. It's even hung. It's not above and it's certainly not below. But And that one is 102.5 millimeter. But again, I want to come out with a new version that allows for bolt holes to go, some bolts to go into this part so that we can hold it together better. And then I want to do another redesign after that to put the Neo further away from the gap. And then what I like is that then we can do, if the Neo is, get this to stay. There we go. If we can put the Neo slug here and then just have this piece of steel, it basically connects the loop and then goes up here to the positive. What we can do is we can put some bolt holes here along with some cooling, and then you can bolt a heatsink to it if you want it as like a sort of a, it's a little more than a go fast ring where it doesn't do anything, but it allows for better heat dissipation. And you'll see this on some of the high-end Neo tweeters that you buy from like Peerless, Vifa, ScanSpeak, Dynaudio. This is what they do to help just prolong the life of the Neo motor. So I think that was it. The other thing we did was change the bolt hole patterns or the bolt hole threading to all M6, because really, again, I think even the steel was made over in China, and Tilo kind of kept up the illusion that they were assembled in America, but I don't think they were, again, it doesn't matter if it's quarter 20 or if it's M6. M6 is just the bigger standard. It's a more international standard. And the Chinese get a little frustrated with you when you when you specify this dumb old imperial bullshit that was given to us by it's not even UK, it was England. So, but anyways, and nobody uses it anymore. So, but except for us, and I think Libya. But anyways, I think that's it. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I don't have any plans in the near future to be reproducing this. I just don't have the money. And I didn't get a response back. Again, I think at the time it was because there wasn't enough traction. Where did I pull that up? I think I pulled it up off of, I don't know where it's at now. Anyways, I found that, I think I can find a corresponding video back to the original post. Again, it said it was January of 24. And so I think if you go back and look at the history on the YouTube channel, you could probably find it where I talk about it a little bit in depth like I did here today. So, but I hope that helps. It's a great motor. It's not magic. It's on par as far as performance goes with something like a Scar ZVX motor or a Sundown X series, whatever, V2, V1, V3. It's all pretty much the same. Something like that. That's about what it's on par with. So it's not the best of the best, but it's definitely good and good enough. And again, the import price on this would probably have to be right around $350. So, and then I don't know, there was a couple, I think it was about a month or two ago, there was PD. I don't really talk to PD anymore. Pete said that he imported 100 of the Neo motors, but I have not seen anything, and nobody sent me any links. I love it when you guys spy for me, and it's not really spying, but you guys find stuff for me and then send me links so that I can check it out or verify it or whatever. So again, I'll put all the links here. This is the out of the archive from the TC Sounds website. I will also put a link to the Audio Pulse so you can see the differences that the changes that Tilo made were basically just cosmetic. And then I will also put this final link, which is from the company that made the cones for TC Sounds, and that was called Tian Li. So Tian Li, however, went out of business, I think, in 2009. And some of that might have been related to the bankruptcy of TC Sounds. But again, they were producing all the same products, and then they were also advertising. I can't remember what this was from. This is from, for a while, they had a lot of leftovers from the Audio Pulse thing and TC Sounds thing, and so that they were trying to, I think, recover a lot of their things. This is the I think this is the 5100. This is a different version of the Neo with Neo radial beehive motor. And then I think this was a 3 HP Neo version that was made to be a shallow woofer. And then I don't think they're advertising any of the top assemblies or the passive radiators, I should say. So, but anyways, that's it for a little bit of history lesson on TC Sounds, Lightning Audio, and the fucked up audio industry. I love you guys. Stay tuned, and we'd love to see you on the live stream on Sundays, 6 p.m. It just gives you easier access to me. Otherwise, I just got to respond through text. Again, you can always text me direct. Just don't call, and don't get mad if I tell you to text, because that's what's best. That's what I can afford. My time is very, very valuable right now. And so text direct 602-312-6504. Introduce yourself. Let me know your full name and your shipping address. And then what I do is I put that in the phone, and then you are important. If you're just some rando trying to get free information out of me, that's rude and it's kind of lame. And I want a relationship with people. To me, that's much more valuable than just answering some tech question. And so for that, you will get more attention. Now, if you want more attention than that, then that's when you got to start making donations to our Lord and Savior Gonzo. And you can do that on the Patreon page, which is patreon.com/robotunderground. And you can help support us that way if you want to do like a donation. And there are different levels of interaction that you can donate for, depending on how much you want me up in your butthole. So I love you guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.